Hello and welcome back to the Not the Old Firm YouTube channel. My name is Ben Banks. To look on a upcoming weekend of Premiership action, plenty going on as per usual in Scottish football. We've had no COVID cases this week, no forfeits, no fines, so hopefully a bit of a smoother episode where we'll hear from Premiership managers and a player or two along the way, both past and present, as we always do here on Not the Old Firm. Do remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video if you do like this type of content. Over the weekend, as well as your usual, this video, the Premiership Preview and the review, will have an exclusive interview with former Inverness defender David Raven. You might be wondering what he's up to now. Well, he's in the 8th tier of English football with Mirren, who famously, most recently, qualified for the next round of the FA Cup, and now in waiting for them are the current, at the time of recording this, Premier League leaders Tottenham Hotspur. Jose Mourinho versus David Raven, somewhat apt for the defender because way back when, a wee while ago before my time, he made his Liverpool debut against Tottenham at White Hart Lane, and now all these years later, he faces Tottenham again. So a really big one for him. We caught up with him. That'll be out on Sunday, and here's a wee sneak peek of what you can expect to see from that
one. Yeah, 100% thought they'd pass me, yeah. God, especially the level that we're at now with Marine at the 8th tier in England, and to get to the third round is just, it's just an amazing achievement, really, when you think about everything in perspective of like the training twice a week and lads working and the budget that we've got, stuff like this, to beat the teams we've beat quite comfortably as well, then to come to this, it's like, yeah, it's brilliant. I think the club are just, it's a bit of a dream tie for the club in terms of, putting us on the map a little bit and pitching yourself against the best, which, currently they're sitting top of the Prem, so, you consider them the best. And I think it's a record of the amount of space in between two teams in the FA Cup. Never in history has there been that much of a gap between the two teams. So it'll be an interesting afternoon, to say the least, yeah. But no, I've never been an advocate for swapping shirts and all that. And, they're just people at the end of the day, extraordinary jobs in an extraordinary sort of position as well, in terms of, say, yeah, you played in World Cups and England captains and stuff like that, but they're just lads, they're just normal lads. I think by asking for someone's share, you're just like elevating them to a position of like they are so much better than you are. And I think this is my view, I just think you do yourself an injustice. Like, what am I going to do with Gareth Bale's shirt? My missus ain't going to want that on the wall. Do you know what I mean? Hey, love, I've got Gareth Bale's shirt. She don't even know who he is. So, like, you know what I mean? That's it's a waste of time for me to even do. Let's be honest. I mean, the man's an absolute superstar, and I think that's the other reason why people want to see. I think we laughed about it the other day. Our manager was laughing his head off because we talked about Mourinho coming to our ground, and he said, "Can you imagine Mourinho walking down here and sitting on a seagull shit on that bench there?"
Back on the Premiership games over the weekend, 4 on the Saturday, 2 on the Sunday, as Celtic and Rangers' European involvement comes to an end. So while the Sunday fixtures don't exactly go away with the busy fixture period we've got on the way, it's going to be, there's no European fixtures to factor into the schedule now, at least until February, when Rangers take to their Europa League games. But regardless of that, it remains for this weekend. Aberdeen, Ross County, Hamilton, Hibs, Motherwell, St Mirren and St Johnstone Livingston make up the Saturday fixtures. And then on the Sunday, Dundee United v Rangers at Tannadice, followed by Celtic v Kilmarnock. Aberdeen, Ross County, looking at that one first. It's an odd one. Aberdeen obviously have been very vocal in their hope for fan returns this week. With the tiers restrictions changing across the country, Dave Cormack been very vocal in the fact that Aberdeen should have fans and they don't want to be fobbed off by the Scottish Government. Quotes such as Jason Leach, National Clinical Director, spent more time on off the ball than he has speaking to clubs. So that's been a bit of back and forth and a bit of needle in there. But on the pitch, Aberdeen looking to continue pushing for that third spot. Hibs currently there just now. And although it would need a massive goal swing, if Aberdeen do win at Pittodrie, they do go level on points with Celtic, who are currently in second, although that could change over the course of the weekend, as we'll talk about just shortly. But it's an interesting one. Ross County obviously brought back down to earth a wee bit last weekend. Obviously, the high of beating Celtic at Parkhead in the League Cup, and then beaten by Rangers fairly comprehensively, 4-0, although Rangers did play extremely well, and Ross County didn't actually too badly, despite the scoreline. So one to keep an eye on in the North East, Hamilton v Hibs, one that I'm going to be at this weekend. Looking forward to Hamilton starting to pick up a wee bit of momentum. They had the forfeit win, albeit they never went and actually played 90 minutes to get the win, but it was 3 points nonetheless. And then they beat Kilmarnock 1-0. So they've started slowly but surely moving up the table, and this is another big one for them against Hibs. But they play a Hibs side with lots to play for themselves and who are very good on the road. The second best Premiership away record in the league outside of Rangers, only by 1 point too. So Hibs in a very good place just now, and they could overtake Celtic in second, which would be a massive achievement for Hibs at this stage in the season as well. And could they retain that? Celtic's form's been wobbly, I think it's fair to say, of late, and Hibs could potentially try and stake that claim for second. The likes of Joe Lewis, Lewis Stevenson, for both Aberdeen and Hibs have spoke about that potentially happening this season, just by how tight the teams are at this stage in the season. It's not very often these days in the modern game that we have seen the teams so tight. Perhaps the last time was when Rangers first came back up into the Premiership and Aberdeen managed to nip in front in second. But apart from that, Rangers are a very different kettle of fish now, and still Aberdeen and Hibs keep them up to date with Celtic in the league standings. But regardless of that, they face a tough test against Hamilton. Ryan Rice has spoken this week about how he wants to make it tough for teams to come to again after winning their first game of the season. But Hibs manager Jack Ross has been linked with moves to Celtic. This week, Graham Matthews saying there's already contingency plans. Graham Matthews, the sporting director at Hibs, saying there's contingency plans in place for the day that Jack Ross does eventually leave Easter Road. They arrived last year following Paul Heckingbottom's stint, and it's understood that the Celtic board quite like Jack Ross to follow his career path from Alloa, St Mirren, Sunderland and now Hibs. And he's been rumoured, if Neil Lennon is to go from Celtic, that Jack Ross could potentially be the man to take over at Parkhead. But will that happen? Not in the eyes of Jack Ross just now, who remains coy on the speculation surrounding him in the Celtic job.
No, I wasn't aware of those comments, Brian. No, not planning to go anywhere soon. So, no, that's it. Look, if Graham's saying that he's just doing the job properly, but certainly from my point of view, very much enjoying the job, and yeah, very happy where I'm at the moment. No, I mean, I think Brian with that, I don't think he'd be surprised to say that I wouldn't comment on that at all, because somebody's in that job. It's a job that is one of the biggest jobs in British football. So it's not for me. It's about my concentration on doing the job here as well as I can. I do feel as if certainly since the summer in particular when we came back, it's felt like a really good fit. I really enjoy the club and the progress we've made so far, and it's just about trying to push us as hard as I can and as far as we can. I think I've always taken it. I've said that if you go back through loads of interviews I've done in the past, this is a very obvious thing to say about this being my profession, but it is, football management is my chosen line of work, and it's something that I want to be the best I can be every single day and try and keep getting better at it. And I found myself in the space of 3 years or 2 years really, because 2016 I was still managing Alloa and 2018 I was managing Sunderland, so it was quite a dramatic change in a short period of time, and I had to cram a lot of learning into that couple of years. And I felt as if I did, and I feel as if I'm still doing that. And it's about, as I said, I don't think that hopefully is ever going to end for me. I just want to be as good as I can be at this job. But I very much enjoy it. I think once people get an insight in it, it can be a lot different to people's expectations of it. But it's certainly one that, as I said, I just continually try and want to be the best I can be in it. And I'm fortunate to do something that I enjoy very much as well.
Mull v St Mirren is another one, and so it's one at the bottom that St Mirren perhaps feels slightly aggrieved by. They go into this bottom of the league, but obviously after losing the appeals during the week, last week, which Kilmarnock and St Mirren, should be noted, have appealed their decisions after 3-0 forfeits given against them and £40,000 suspended fines. St Mirren were given 2 3-0 defeats, and then they drew 1 each with Aberdeen last week. So while they have gone 8 games unbeaten, it has been, again, slightly stop-start for them and disappointment thrown in, which has been much the tale of St Mirren's season so far, despite the fact they've not actually done too badly on the park. But Mull were the main benefactors of that, 6 points they got. So despite the fact they got beat 3-0 last week, they still managed to win 2 games 3-0 and get 6 points. Such is the bizarre world of Scottish football. But because of that, they sit 9 points clear of St Mirren between 5th and 12th, which probably shows you just how tight these teams are. I know 9 points isn't exactly a small gap, but it's not exactly a gap that's insurmountable at this stage in the season. But if you take away those points, I mean, Mull sit on 15 points and St Mirren on 12, and all of a sudden you could potentially see St Mirren perhaps not moving close, because again, that goal difference swing is a bit of a challenge. They'd probably still need to win by a few goals in that case, but you could have seen St Mirren go level on points here against Mull, a Mull side who haven't been all that great at Fir Park this season. They've lost to Hamilton, Dundee United, drew with Livingston there, Hibs last weekend, St Johnstone in the League Cup, heavy defeats to Celtic and Rangers. So St Mirren might fancy their chances in this one, although Jim Goodwin, speaking before the game, says his strikers need to improve in front of goal if that is to be the case.
Well, obviously we're disappointed with that, because I believe that we've got some very good players in the forward areas, and I do believe that we are now creating more opportunities in recent games than we ever have done. We're aware of it, but at the same time, I don't want to bog the strikers and the midfielders down with unnecessary pressure. But again, they are aware of it too, because ultimately, as a centre forward, you're paid to put the ball in the back of the net. It's as simple as that. And if you're not assisting and you're not scoring in that particular part of the pitch, then you're not really contributing. So, yeah, we need to be a little bit tougher on each other, I think, and really start to be ruthless. I think that's the bottom line, and start, putting teams to the sword, because our defensive record is, as I think it's top 4 of the league, actually. Take away the 6 goals that we got chucked on last week. Prior to that, I think we had the third best goals against in the league. Now, I'd much rather have the third best goals for in the league, because that would mean we were scoring far more goals. But we're doing well at one end. We need to do better at the other. It's as simple as that.
In the Mull camp ahead of this one, Stephen Robinson is looking forward to bringing Jake Carroll back into the seasons, albeit not this weekend. He's been out since February with an Achilles tendon injury. He's had COVID problems. He's had self-isolation problems in terms of just being stuck in the house for a couple of months, like the rest of us were at the start of the year. But it certainly hasn't helped his recovery from an injury. Mull didn't recruit in the left-back area because he was expected back in the September time. So Ricky Lamie and Nathan McGinley have had to sort of fill in there from centre-back as Jake Carroll continues his recovery. But Stephen Robinson says that Jake Carroll isn't too far away from a return to play.
Well, Devontae will be available. He's trained a couple of days. Whether he's available to start or not, we'll see. Jordan White won't be available. And Jake Carroll's trained for 2 or 3 days. But again, as I said last week, he's still a good few weeks away before we even get him into any kind of competitive games.
Nice to even just have a couple of bodies. I know you've said the last few weeks that perhaps injuries have been a real problem here this season.
Yeah, they have. We got another young goalkeeper, Matty Connolly's injured as well. He's hurt his shoulder, so we've had a real nightmare with goalkeepers in general. But even to see Jake Carroll on the pitch, training with the boys again, I've had a real problem in the left back position, a real problem. We brought Ricky and Nathan in as both centre halves, and we've had to use them because we expected Jake to be back a lot sooner. But COVID actually was the problem. For the first 2 months we couldn't do any rehab with him at all. It was all social distancing in that March-April time. So we're about 2 months behind with Jake. We thought we'd have him back early September. So I've asked people to do jobs, especially Ricky, who's an out-and-out centre half. Nathan, who's probably left of a 3 or centre half more than a left back. So I've asked people to do jobs, and it has been a problem position. So the sooner we get Jake back and Trevor Carson back on the pitch again on today, Trevor's going to start training today with the physio. So, it's looking a little bit brighter, but not soon enough.
How is Jake mentally as well? Because it's obviously been a long time with everything that happened earlier this year as well. To be back on the pitch must be a real relief for him.
Yeah, he's, and then he actually, he had the problems with COVID. We were off as well. So he's been really affected by COVID, in terms of his early rehab, and then when he was coming back. Obviously the physios couldn't see him early on. So yeah, it's been a long road for him, almost, I think it's over a year now. So yeah, we can't expect him to come straight back into it after a year out. But mentally, Jake's a strong boy, really, really strong boy. We need more boys like Jake, as I've spoke about earlier, that can demand more of each other, and instead of me doing all the shouting and cajoling, that we can get other boys on the pitch. So that'll be sooner rather than later, and someone I'm looking forward to.
And finally, St Johnstone versus Livingston's the other one. Two teams in a bit more positive spirits, especially St Johnstone after the draw at Celtic Park last weekend. They're on the longest unbeaten run their club has had as a Premiership team in their history. So they're willing to continue that against a Livingston side, and David Martindale, still in interim charge, still wanting to prove a point that he can become the full-time Livingston manager, currently head of football operations and assistant manager to Gary Holt before he left as well. So he's got a point to prove up there. All good things must come to an end, but for St Johnstone, they'll be very optimistic that that won't be happening anytime soon. They look very solid at the back and decent going forward on the counter. So one to watch this weekend. Livingston as well. I don't think it's ever easy. I don't think any team in the Premiership particularly likes playing Livingston. The way they've played the last few weeks, the 4-0 win over Ayr United in the League Cup and the 2-0 win over Dundee United last weekend shows that they're slowly getting back to form that they showed last season, when they finished 5th in the Premiership. So that concludes our Saturday fixtures. Dundee United v Rangers kicks us off again on the Sunday. Mickey Mellon is back in the dugout for this one, albeit Stevie Frail, his assistant, won't be back. He's still suffering with COVID-19. But a very tough one this for Dundee United. Their squad wasn't too badly impacted in terms of the starting 11 last weekend away to Livingston, albeit they did have a lot of youngsters on the bench. But Dundee United fans, even though they don't actually sit too badly in the table, they sit 6th just now, and 3 points clear of 7th, 8th in Kilmarnock and St Johnstone. Fans have been a bit unhappy with the style of play, perhaps needing a bit of imagination going forward. While they have been fairly solid at the back, they've not been scoring a lot of goals as well. Lawrence Shankland only scored a couple of goals after being tipped to sort of set the Premiership alight following 2 really good seasons in the lower leagues. Nicky Clark seems to have stepped up and filled that void recently, but overall it's not been great in front of goal for them, despite the fact Benjamin Siegrist is having the season of his life in goals up the other end. But it'll be a tough test for them against Rangers. Rangers strolling past everybody. They played a top European side in Lech Poznan during the week with pretty much a second string team, and they waltzed to a 2-0 victory. So that just shows you the strength and depth they've got. And if they even field half a team with some of their regular stars in it on Sunday, Dundee United will find it very difficult, especially with the fact they've still got players probably still missing, and even if they're not missing, still probably suffering side effects of COVID-19. And on the other game on the Sunday, Celtic v Kilmarnock. Kilmarnock will probably be a weird welcome in Celtic Park. Reports of protests and stuff happening as the players enter the ground on Sunday. So likely, even though there'll be no fans, there will probably be a bit of a hostile atmosphere in there just with everything that's going on at Celtic just now. They had a bit of tension relieved after beating Lille 3-2, a bit of optimism going into this game, albeit I think small margins of optimism. But Kilmarnock, they've not exactly been on easy street the last couple of weeks. They lost to Hamilton weekend on top of the COVID fines and forfeits that they were given, albeit they were only given one 3-0 forfeit. But it hasn't helped their league standings. They're obviously looking to push for the top 6. They currently sit 3 points outside it, so not all lost, but a game against the team who is currently in 5th, who they are only 4 points behind, having 3 points in that potentially a game at Rugby Park could have been massive for them. But they have appealed the decision, so it'll be interesting to see whether that gets rebuked, and if it does get overturned, what actually happens there, because I think then you get into murky waters with Motherwell and Hamilton probably then are thinking, well, why should we get 6 and 3 points taken off us? But in terms of the game on Sunday, I don't think there's many better time to play Celtic at the moment if you're a team outside of Glasgow, albeit teams will be very, very wary of the fact that it's still a top-class team full of top-class players. But as Ross County and St Johnstone have shown in recent weeks, they pretty much just put the barricades up and hit the counter. And Celtic really haven't been able to deal with that. They've not been able to penetrate them in attack, but they're also not strong enough defensively to hold out teams for 90 minutes, it would seem. I can't remember the last time Celtic kept a clean sheet. So it's there for Kilmarnock. If they turn up, put in a really good effort, good team performance, there's potentially get at least a point out of this, potentially more. But they'll be well aware that this will be an extremely tough test. So that's us for this preview. Hope you have enjoyed. Do remember to check out our David Raven interview that's out over the weekend, as well as our Premiership review that will be out early next week before we get back to sort of League Cup action. And it's we're hitting silly season in Scottish football. We've got the League Cup quarter-finals next midweek. The Premiership then comes back as we enter the Christmas week. We've got games a couple of days before Christmas. We've got games a couple of days after, and then we've got games before the New Year and just after the New Year as well. So it's all happening in Scottish football from here on in. Plenty of content coming as a consequence of that, not the old firm. So we hope you do enjoy that. Please do remember to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and check us out on our website and our Twitter. And until next time, take it easy.